Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Lola Gershfeld with Level 5 Executive. Welcome and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. So conflicts happen all the time. And the question always, do you have the feeling that you get into the same conflict over and over again? Well, when you recognize it, do you feel like you can do something about it? Or are you left feeling powerless and helpless? Well, I've been in both of these places and felt the same way. So today I will share with you the scientific method of how you can recognize these conflicts and to stop the negative patterns when they're happening and move into a better communication and interactions with your board or team members. I'm a board dynamics specialist and a developer of the board and team dynamics process, which we will abbreviate as BDP. BDP has demonstrated its effectiveness in helping boards and teams to be much more engaged, much more effective with each other, productive and transparent. People tell me that they have fun working together, and it's all done through this process of emotional connection. And, you know, I got into this field because years ago, I served on a private company board. And as I was sitting in this boardroom, seeing distressed board members getting immersed in the drama, first of all, it was totally fascinating for me. And secondly, it left me feeling completely incompetent because I had no idea what I was doing. And it wasn't like I didn't have any business experience. By that time, I had 15 years of building companies, hiring people, making decisions. So, but the drama that was going on in that boardroom was so much more powerful than any of the problems that I have experienced in business or read about in books. And I would try all kinds of things to stop this drama. I tried teaching people skills. Well, now we know that people can only use those skills when they don't really need them. They could only use those skills when they're not overwhelmed by these enormously powerful emotions. But when things get really difficult, the skills go out the window. Then I would teach people to take a time out. And what I saw, at least half of the time, it actually made things worse. Because one person would shut down and the other would get more upset, not less upset. And then there was teaching people insight. So I got pretty good at that. And board members would say to me, "Thank you very much. That was very interesting insight. Now, where was I?" And then they would just go back attacking each other, which was completely frustrating. Well, thank God. I mean, I don't know where I would be. Thank goodness for this new science of emotional connection. And you know, the thing that hit me the most, I knew that those board members really cared about each other and they cared about the company. You know how some people say, "Oh, people don't care," or you know, people have a different agenda. Well, that wasn't the case. So I really knew that board members cared about this, about each other, and that didn't seem to help. So I always found this drama fascinating. And I kind of got obsessed with understanding this drama. I think I was a bit psychotic because after every meeting, I would run home and draw these diagrams of how people interacted with each other during meeting and the way conflicts would start and how the interactions would change between board members. And I would write down phrases and notice that the dynamics would change. And gradually, I started to see patterns. And this is what a bonding science talks about, about the patterns. I also saw patterns in the ways people dealt with their emotions and the message that they sent to each other. And it became very clear to me that emotion was the driving force of the conflicts that we were having. And it was the emotion that was organizing these interactions. And we're mostly, in those days, people dealt with everything but emotions. I mean, people would try to rationalize behaviors, teaching people control their interactions by cognitive skill sets, but nobody was actually working with emotions. So I started to learn how to do that. And I started doing that and things started to change. And I got really excited about it. And I started to write articles about it, to speak about it. And then I fought like hell against all the wisdom of the traditional corporate governance and the way people dealt with conflicts. And people would tell me that talking about emotions was ridiculous and that the boardroom was not a place where you talk about emotions. So it was pretty ambitious of me, but that the results really blew my mind. And in the beginning, I was still not clear what I was doing. I mean, I didn't understand, well, what does this drama mean? And why is this working? I'm helping people to have conversations with less criticism and blaming, with less stonewalling and withdrawing. Okay, fine. But that was just half the picture. Then I seem to be helping people to move into some sort of new connection with each other. But what is this really? I mean, is this just some sort of sentimentality where I share a bit of my vulnerability with you and that makes you feel better about me for a bit? What is this? And it was only when I started to link John Bowlby's work on attachment, which right then was only applied to mother and child, but then the science of adult bonding took off when I suddenly realized, my gosh, board and team dynamics is all about attachment. It's all about creating secure bonds. And John Bowlby captured this drama when he looked at mothers and children beginning in 1960s in England. And what Bowlby basically said that, and it like took 20 years for people to start adult bonding research, but what Bowlby said that we are bonding social animals. And we have a mammalian brain that is designed to keep us safe. So when we work together in a group like such as board or a team, we start to depend on each other to make the company successful, to make the project successful, whatever it is. We become dependent. And this dependency creates an attachment. And our mammalian brain gets activated. And so it turns on our bonding needs. John Bowlby also taught us that emotional connection is not some sort of psychotic mixture of sentiment. Emotional connection is an ancient wired-in survival code that is designed to keep people that we depend on close to us. So that makes total sense. That means that in our board and team relationships, emotional connection is what really tells you whether you can trust each other, be open and transparent with each other, and be there for each other in time of need. And when you get disconnected, your mammalian brain codes that disconnection in terms of life and death. So this is why people get so angry, so devastated, so sad, so afraid, so fast. That's why people get triggered each other, because their mammalian brain codes this disconnection in terms of life and death. When you feel like you are getting into some same type of conflict over and over again, it is really because you are not addressing the core attachment need. And from an attachment point of view, conflict is an inflammation. The virus is emotional disconnection. Emotional disconnection for a group of mammals who seek connection, a disconnection is viewed as a danger cue. And so when I hear people say, for example, oh, I quit because of differences, I say, no, you didn't. Differences are about topics. Topics don't define your relationship. The key bonding question from an attachment point of view that defines a relationship is only and always about one question. Are you there for me? Do I matter? Let's do it in Are you there for me? A-R-E. Can I rely on you to be accessible to me in time of need, when I call you, when I reach you, when I need you? Can you be accessible to me even if you're feeling stressed? Or will you respond to me when I call? Will you tune into me and be responsive to me when I need you? E, will you be able to be engaged with me? Will you be able to be emotionally engaged with me, even though you're feeling stressed, even though you don't agree with me? If for the majority of your experience, if for the majority of your time, you are getting a clear answer, yes, in your interactions with each other, then your mammalian brain feels safe and connected in that relationship. That means when you interact in your board meetings, in your team meetings, and you interact with each other, your mammalian brain stays calm, and that allows you to collaborate, be creative, solve challenges together, and be open with each other. However, if the majority of the time you get a no or a maybe answer to that question, then your mammalian brain is constantly on guard, where you don't feel safe. You are constantly assessing whether you're connected or you're not connected, and you actually start to push for that connection through complaining, blaming, or criticizing each other. Or you withdraw and create a distance. It's like on one hand, you want to be connected with that person, but it's too dangerous because they haven't been there for you. Your mammalian brain says, stay away, or it's too dangerous, be on guard. In both cases, that triggers a negative cycle. And so when I tell people that scientists have cracked the code to board and team effectiveness, what I mean is by understanding how emotions get triggered and how our brain works, we can now intelligently shape our most important relationships in our company culture, our board and team dynamics. And for the first time in corporate governance, for the first time in business, you can base this on a clear research in understanding of the phenomena you're trying to change. And you can understand what matters in board and team interactions. So you could be on target. And obviously, the difference between being on target for an intervention and not being on target, just addressing all kinds of symptoms, but not really getting to the heart of the matter, is huge. So what we have understood from the last 25 years of research on attachment and adult bonding is that even if you had negative interactions with people that you work with your board or team members, even if you are in a distress situation right now, you can learn to understand this phenomena called emotional connection. You can learn to see the patterns in your interactions, the way you move into your communication, the way you trigger each other, how you step on each other's feet, get in each other's ways, push each other's off balance. And you can learn how to help each other in moments of emotional disconnect. When your brain freaks out because it says, you're all alone, this person doesn't care, you can learn to step out of that negative pattern and help each other to create what we call a secure base. And I'll tell you what people say after about 4 or 5 sessions in BDP. They say, hey, we are caught in that thing again. We are caught in that thing where I can't seem to connect with you and I get all upset. I start to feel like I don't matter and I start poking you. And when I poke you to respond to me, this is one of those times when you think I'm hurting you and you want to get away. And the other person says, yeah, that's right. I just want to run. I just want to run. But I know that we're starting to understand that when I run, that totally freaks you out and you poke me even more. So shall we not do that? Do you want to get some coffee or tea or something? And let's talk about it at our next session. And they say, yeah, let's do that. So the first step is to recognize the negative cycle. And that kind of brings a little bit of emotional safety for each other, emotional balance. So there's nobody at fault. The bad guy is the negative cycle. And in our workshops, in our trainings that we do, people create all kinds of names for it. They say, we are caught in the spiral. We are caught in the clash of the titans, one board called themselves. We are caught in a nothing. We are caught in a tornado. So take a moment and think about your cycle. What name would you call it? And if you'd like to share it, go ahead and send it over your chat box. So in this process, people can actually recognize the emotional disconnection that is happening, understand how important it is, and help each other out of it. So that means they can create this stable platform in their relationship. And then, and this is important, and then because that's not enough, stable platform of not fighting, not actively cutting each other off, freaking each other out is not enough. So we have learned how to help people to have what we call bonding conversations, where what is possible is that you can learn in an emotionally balanced way. You can learn how to put your emotions together, how to share your vulnerability with your peers in a positive way that pulls you closer together. And you can also learn how to tune into each other so you can respond and be together on the same level, so you don't miss each other in a way that creates a secure bond. And a secure bond is predictive of every kind of mental health that you can think of. Good social skills, people start to empathize, listen better, collaborate better. It's also predictive of personal growth. It's predictive of every good mental process that you can imagine. People start making better decisions. They come up with better ideas. And it's also, the research is finding that it is also predictive of physical health. It is the way we are meant to be. We are born longing for this connection, this emotional connection with people that we work with the people that we depend on. We try to move into it, trying to hold on to it when it's lost. And now we can actually show people how to do that. And once you do that, then it's like your whole system becomes available for being creative in the world, collaborating with your board and team members, collaborating with other people, engaging, innovating, working together the way that you're meant to work. Whereas without it, your entire system becomes compromised. I mean, think about it. If you're spending 75% of your energy trying to prove to other people that you know everything, worrying about whether people will accept you, feeling alone, trying to persuade yourself that you don't need other people, or actively trying to please other people, just imagine all that. I mean, that takes a huge amount of energy. And if you're spending 80% of your energy in that obviously, it cripples you. It cripples you in terms of being able to grow and contribute. It cripples you in able to be creative. And it also cripples you in terms of being able to deal with stress. There was a great research study done after 9/11, where the researchers looked at companies in the vicinity to where the towers came down. They looked at people who worked at those companies after the event, and they looked at them 18 months later. And what they found was that the people who could have these conversations, what we call bonding conversations, similar to the one that we teach in BDP, where people could turn to each other, confide and be vulnerable with each other and ask for support and take in their support, they were doing pretty fine after 18 months later. They seem to have grown, they seem to have become more engaged and more collaborative, and were doing pretty well. But the people who could not do that, they could not turn for support, but every time they turned, it was like there were some mixed messages and anxiety going on. They were doing pretty badly. And so they had all kinds of symptoms. We know from the research that the best source of resilience in human beings is our ability to be able to reach for each other when we need them, when the dragon comes over to us, when we are emotionally unbalanced, when we get off when we have all the stress, when we deal with the investors, customers, with each other sometimes, it is so much easier for us to get back to the emotional balance when we know we can turn to each other. This is the most powerful strategy we have for dealing with our vulnerableness. The fact that life is bigger than us, this is our biggest strength as species, and somehow we've forgotten that. What I'm trying to say is that the most effective way for us to deal with the economy or the competition or building the company is to create this secure bond with our board and team members, because this is what makes us stronger. Also, research shows that in the process, people grow each other. So we're talking about parts of BDP. And so I might say to the CEO, one part of you want to reach and ask for that support. What did you say? You said you want them to reel you in because you're stuck, right? You put up a wall and then you get stuck. But the other part of you doesn't. The other part wants to keep that wall up and shut her out. And he says, yes, yes. But here's the issue. The key part for me is I help this person to put his emotional experience together in a collaborative, respectful way. I help him to make sense of his emotional reality. And then having put that emotional music together, I help him turn into a new interaction, a new message. So that then I say to him, could you tell her, please? Could you tell her, one part of me wants me to stay with my wall up so you can't hurt me and I'm safe, but it's lonely back here. And the other part of me wants to reach for you and show you that I'm hurting because I want you to reel me in. And the CFO listens. See, the real healing happens when he says this to his CFO and he looks into her face, and instead of seeing the rejection that he's sure to be there, he sees support and care. And she says, I never knew that. I just feel like you shut me out and I feel like I don't matter. I never knew that you get lonely behind your wall and you want me to reel you in. I want to help you, but I can't do it unless you show me where you hurt. And then they have this whole new conversation which heals them and grows them. We grow as human beings with others. That's the way it works. That's how we get a strong sense of self. We are created from the feedback of people give us and the implicit memories we have creating these secure bonds of feeling important, of mattering to people. So I think that the most basic thing for human beings is that we are homo vinculum. We are the ones who bond. And when we are able to create that safety for each other, we thrive and we grow. We are social attachment bonding animals. And our whole nervous system is wired for that. It's not a choice, it's bred into your blood. And understanding yourself as a bonding animal will help you to make sense of your emotions and your interactions with people that you work with. It also will help you to make sense of how terrified we are of rejection and abandonment, which we are. There's lots of wonderful neuroscience that is feeding into this now. Naomi Eisenberger, for example, at UCLA, talks about that the fact that our response in our brain to rejection from people that we depend on happens in the same place and in the exact same way as our response to physical pain. You are a bonding animal. So getting a rejection from one of your peers and stepping on a nail, your brain basically registers that and in the same way. They are both danger cues. So understanding of who we are is very much linked to understanding our interactions with each other and how we trigger each other. And the cycle of interaction really depends on the response you're able to provide when you feel rejected or abandoned. Ed Tronick, who is a developmental psychologist, who studies attachment, did a great, amazing 2-minute video, which is on YouTube. I invite you to look at it. It's called Still Face. And I think this is the best way to teach attachment is to watch this video. You see this baby and the mother interact with each other. And all the mother does is she stops responding to the baby. She does still face. She stops interacting and sending any cues. She goes still and silent. And you watch this baby in the video. The baby goes through all the things that bonding science says the baby will go through in the exact same sequence. How many times, I mean, you've been in meetings where somebody just stops talking or stops responding, right? And you think that as adults, we would be able to deal with it differently, but we don't because of our mammalian brain. So in the video, the baby notices like crazy, responds like crazy, picks it up and starts to shriek at the mother. And the baby is really saying, "Where are you? Where are you? Where did you go?" And the baby shrieks. And if you put that into adult relationships, people say, "You're late. You never come to meetings on time," right? So it's a bit harder to decipher in adult relationships. So the baby shrieks. And then when the baby doesn't get a response from the mother, then the baby turns away. Turns right around in her chair, like basically saying, "Okay, then I'm going to shut you out. This is scary stuff. I'm going to shut you out." And the baby tries everything she can to get the mother back. And when this is pushing and poking doesn't work. This is in adults complaining, criticizing, and blaming. And then withdrawing doesn't work. The baby goes into meltdown. And basically, meltdown in adults is a panic response. It's fear. This is when we feel terribly vulnerable, terribly hurt, and most of the time, we don't even know how to deal with that to keep us connected. So the baby goes into meltdown. And then, of course, in the video, the mother becomes responsive and creates a repair. The mother invites the child and the baby responds. When we can't get people to respond to us, or when we don't feel important, like we matter, or when we feel like we are failing or disappointing people that we depend on, or we feel rejected, our mammalian brain goes into panic. And how you deal with that panic is a key defining element in your board and team relationships. If you can deal with that panic by staying balanced and sharing it and risking it, making sense of it, then you can repair the rift. If you deal with that panic by getting incredibly angry, demanding people to respond to you, or shutting down and saying, "I am leaving," you're in trouble, trouble, trouble. And you get caught in this pattern that keeps you alone and disconnected. In a way, what we are doing in BDP is we are teaching people to identify the pattern they get stuck in, stop their disconnection, and then help them to repair that connection through the bonding conversations that creates a secure bond. So BDP has 3 stages. So in the first stage, we identified the pattern of interaction. And so when researchers looked at different patterns, they really identified 3 main patterns. The first one is attack, which is very difficult to keep up. Everyone gets into it occasionally, and sometimes people call it as find the bad guy. This is where you feel totally out of control. You feel like you're in a tornado and the cycle just takes over you. But if you listen to an attack pattern, people are going after the booby prize, which is we're incredibly miserable, but it's your fault, not mine. So I can hold on to me being okay, even if I'm all by myself, which is a really bad booby prize, actually. So we help people to see that. But most of the time, people don't get caught in that too much because it's so painful. They can't tolerate it. The next one, which is the most popular in the Western world, is what we call demand withdrawal, where one person is like the baby pushing for connection, but the message gets distorted. And it can get pretty negative. This is where people start complaining, criticizing, and blaming. So in your interactions with anybody that you, as soon as you hear complaining, blaming, or criticizing, what they actually telling you is they're losing connection. They want to reconnect, but they don't know how to say that. Like one board that I worked with would tell me, we poke him and poke him and poke him. Anything to get a response from our CEO. Because if there's no response, there is no relationship. And once in every 10 times, it works. So we keep on doing that. And the CEO says, the board is so dangerous. I have my guard up all the time and I shut down. And I guess I do shut them out. And the more they poke me, the more I run. And the more I run, the more they poke me. And this has been going on for, I don't know, last 3 years. And if you listen to the emotions underneath that and help to make sense of them, it's all about connection and disconnection. Disconnection and trying to get back to connection. And that process is wired into your bones. So you have attack, you have demand withdrawal, which almost everyone gets caught in, and sometimes. And it has been part of that relationship for so long, people don't even understand what's happening. Like one executive said to me, I don't even understand why I'm so angry. I don't even understand why I shut them out. And I don't really believe that they care about this company or care about me. So people get all caught up in this. And then if these two patterns get going and there seems to be no solution and no way of reconnecting, people go into a third one, which is called freeze and flee, where people are withdrawn in their relationship. And I think this has mostly happened when they just get burned out. Where there are hundreds and hundreds of interactions, they go demand and withdraw, and people just burn out. So people understand their drama, their pattern, and when they feel disconnected, and they can start identifying what's happening with them. So take a moment to think of your interaction. Where do you see your pattern falls? Is it an attack, demand, withdraw, or freeze and flee? And keep in mind that these patterns also occur in positive relationships. The difference is, in positive relationship, it's not the main show in town. And you have other interactions as well, where you could often find a way to turn and reconnect with each other. The real problems comes when you can't do that, and the relationship starts to turn into a desert. And you start to do things and to think of all dreadful things about each other, like the other person is mean and horrible, they're only complaining and they're not being trusted. So you go into this tunnel vision where you don't see the other person as someone who is hurting and someone who is struggling. So we help people to understand their pattern of interaction, where they start to see that the other person, somebody who is scared and afraid, rather than this mean person and distant person. Then this gives you the platform to learn how to open up and connect and reach out in a totally different way. So the first stage in BTP is to understand the pattern of your interaction and create a safe container. Together, we identify the steps that each person takes to trigger the cycle, and that is called your raw spot triggers. In stage 2, we lead you to create bonding conversations where we help you to process your emotions and heal your relationship injuries, creating new interactional responses where you can pull each other closer. So that in the question, do I matter? Are you there for me? You hear a resounding yes. So that you can deal with those emotions of disconnection in a more positive way, and where you can say to each other, I'm really feeling disconnected from you. I'm feeling lonely, and it's difficult for me to even tell you this because you seem so busy and I'm so preoccupied. I'm telling you this because it's getting really, really hard for me. I'm feeling all by myself here. And so you can talk about your fears and your vulnerability in a clear way. You don't say, I'm getting really upset and it's your fault. You talk about it in a clear way, where you can put it all this together, where you can create safety for each other, and you can ask for what you need. You can say, you know, what I need for you to tell me that you're busy right now, but you're still thinking of me. I still matter to you. And then we can talk about this sometime next week. And, you know, sometimes people say, well, I don't really want to do that. Like the CEO who said he wants his CFO to reel him in. At first he said, I don't want to tell her, you know, I don't want to tell her that I get stuck behind the wall, that I need her to reel me in. That's scary. That's too risky. I never done this in my life. You know, I don't talk to people like that. I just want them to know and come and get me. Now they're not so distressed anymore, so they can actually laugh about it. And his CFO says, well, that's kind of hard for me to do that because I don't know that you're hurting. I think I'm disappointing you, that I'm not doing a good enough job. I mean, I can guess sometimes maybe I might miss your cues, but so you need to help me. You need to tell me where you get stuck and how you're hurting. And he says, yes, I know. I just don't want to take the risk. I just, you know, I'm in a strange territory. Well, he is in a strange territory, you know, but the funny thing is, all I have to do is give him a little bit of support. And he turns and he does it. He does it. And this is what happens in the process. People start to move into new interactional patterns bit by bit, where they create a new experience. You know, a psychologist once said, change happens when you create new emotional experience. And this is where they start to feel competent to deal with their emotions. They become much more clear about what's going on in their relationship, in their interaction, and they're much more willing to take those risks. And so the CEO turns and says, you know, it's uncomfortable for me to tell you this. I don't want to ask you because I'm afraid you wouldn't be there for me. But I do need you to reel me in when I get stuck behind the wall, because I'm freaking out and I need your reassurance. And he pulls for a new response where the CFO says, how can I do that? What can I do to provide you with that reassurance? And he says, just be there. Don't use lots of words because I get overwhelmed. Just be there. Now, this man came up with this all by himself. It's like we know this in our bones. We have this longing for emotional connection, and it's almost like we know it, even if we haven't seen it in past relationships. And we can help people move into it because this is just part of who we are. We're a homo vinculum, right? We are the ones who bond. And stage 3 is where we validate and integrate and the process of emotional connection, providing people constant feedback of support and reassurance of the new steps that they are taking in the process. You know, I've been in a business career the last 34 years and 5 months actually. Tomorrow is my daughter's birthday. She's going to be turning 34. And before she was born, a few months before, we opened our first electronic manufacturing company. And in my 34 years of career, whether it is, you know, building companies, working as an HR, working as a CFO, serving on boards, or doing the board dynamics for the last 7 years, I have not seen a more effective way to creating a more engaging boards and teams than with the process of emotional connection. All behavior modification programs, individual coaching, or any of the cognitive skill sets cannot compare close to the results you get with emotional connection and how quickly people move into that bonding together. And, you know, people who go through BDP, they say that it's not only changes the way they work together, it changes their sense of competence. It also changes their personal life. You start to understand your own relationships better. You start to know how to create these bonds with people that are most close to you, your family. I mean, the one that starts out for me is my relationship with my mom. I'm not sure if I would have such a close connection with my mom if it wouldn't be for this process. It's like my mom and I would get critical, of each other. I would just go into panic, completely dismissive and contemptuous. And with all my knowledge, it doesn't matter. You're still an emotional being. I would go berserk, completely frantic. And that would leave me terrible, like a terrible daughter. And that would leave my mom feeling alone and hopeless. And it was really bad, not only just for our relationship and for our family, but it was really bad for her health. So it helped me a lot when I started saying, Mom, I think we're getting caught in one of these conversations where I start to feel like I'm disappointing you and you start to feel like I'm not hearing you. Aren't we caught in that? And she would say, yes, I think we are. And that would be so cute. She would learn these 3 sentences and she would recite them automatically. She would say, Lola, your feelings are valid. I hear you and everything is going to be okay. And somehow these 3 sentences would bring that emotional balance to me, that would calm me down. And then I have to change the emotional music, right? We have to repair, we have to talk about the things. So I say to her, which is going beyond stopping the negative pattern. I say, Mom, I think we got off track. I can hear that you're really worried about your granddaughter. I hear how scared you are and how much you want her to be happy and successful. I know that you really love her and I feel that you want her to feel safe. And of course that pulls her on a different level, right? And she says, I am really worried about her. So then we're both worried. So what do? We comfort each other. And somehow when you comfort each other, there's a whole new ability comes to you. When you have your emotional balance back, your mind starts to think differently. And suddenly you have a whole new set of solutions that appear to you where they weren't before. The same thing happens with your board and team members. Once you get your emotional balance, you can say things like, what do you think about this idea? And the other person says, I think that's good. We can do that. And what do you think about that? So the whole thing starts to shift. So the first thing is we have to understand the pattern that you get caught in and understand that your attachment needs and fears are the music of this pattern. And by the end of BDP, what we see is that people start to deal with their emotions differently. They start to deal with feelings of rejection and abandonment differently. They can quickly get back to their emotional balance and reach for each other when they feel stressed and disconnected. And they can reconnect with each other much more quickly, and they can be more engaged with each other on all different levels. And you feel like your whole new dynamics start to emerge. Your meetings becomes more engaging and more fun. It becomes a safe harbor for you. So when you go out in the world and you deal with all different challenges and problems, you can come back to your board and team and recharge and get re-energized because people are emotionally connected there. And you can deal with day-to-day businesses much, much better. I was in a meeting recently and people said, we have so much more laughter during our meeting. And it's not because we're taking things lightly. It's because we're having so much more fun working together than before. It's not by accident that our logo includes the slogan, improving corporate lives, because this is exactly what we see happening with emotional connection. That is why we focus our work on boards and teams interactions, because these relationships have the most impact on the company culture. As one chairman recently said at a board meeting that I was at, With emotional connection, we operate with no curtains and no walls. The more emotionally connected you become with your board and team members, the more creative and innovative and happier you will be. Because nothing grows people like emotional connection.